What would you do if your husband of 17 years returned from a business trip, dropped divorce papers on your table, and demanded $9,000 a month, all while your ex-best friend stood by his side, smiling smugly? For Megan, a 45-year-old illustrator, living a quiet life in the suburbs of Portland, that afternoon changed everything. But what her husband and best friend didn't know was that Megan wasn't just a quiet artist, she was a storm they never saw coming. My name is Megan. I'm 45 years old, an illustrator, and I live in a modest little house tucked into the sleepy suburbs of Portland. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name and waves when you walk past with a basket of groceries. Out front, I have a rose garden. Not extravagant, but peaceful, the kind with blooms that know your hand by the way you prune them. I often spend hours there, sketching ideas for children's books while sipping herbal tea. My days have been marked by soft light, quiet pages, and stories I bring to life with watercolors. That peaceful world came crashing down one Tuesday afternoon. It was the day my husband, Logan, was supposed to return from a long business trip. He'd been gone for over a month, the kind of absence that leaves a faint echo of loneliness in every corner of the house. But I had plans for that day, not grand, just simple ones. I imagined us sharing tea, me showing him the new draft of my latest children's book, but he didn't come back alone. When I opened the front door, Logan walked in with a blank expression and set a thick envelope on the kitchen table. I opened my mouth to greet him, to ask about his trip, but before I could speak, he said coldly, "These are the divorce papers. I want you to sign them. Oh, and starting next month, make sure you send me $9,000 every month." "You don't do anything anyway." I froze. 17 years of marriage, and those were the words I got. But it wasn't the papers that stunned me. It was the woman who stepped through the door behind him, Ivor, my best friend since high school, my maid of honor, the person who knew every joy and every scar I carried. She stood there, clinging to Logan's arm with a smug little smirk, as if my life was her trophy now. 100 questions raced through my mind, but only one sentence made it past my lips. "A divorce? Fine." They both blinked, caught off guard by my calmness. Logan raised an eyebrow. "That's it?" I nodded slowly, walking to the table, picking up the envelope. "That's it." I turned and walked into my studio, shutting the door behind me. Outside, I heard of a whisper, "Told you. She's not going to make a scene." Someone that weak? What's there to be afraid of? But I wasn't weak. Not anymore. Sitting at my desk, I laid the divorce papers in front of me. My hands trembled, not with heartbreak, but with fury at myself for not seeing it sooner, for letting two snakes sleep under my roof, for believing Logan when he said I was lucky to have him, for swallowing his subtle jabs, the way he made me feel like a burden while I quietly built a career writing books that lit up the hearts of children. No more. I walked to the mirror. The woman who stared back at me wasn't soft anymore. There were no tears, just me, Megan, calm, cold, calculating, not defeated, but reborn. That night, I emailed my attorney, not Logan's attorney, mine, the one who had managed every copyright and royalty for my children's books for over a decade. I asked him to review every asset registered in my name. What Logan never knew, because he never bothered to ask, was that I had a second bank account, a quiet one, just in case. Every royalty check, every international sale, every bonus for merchandising, it went there. If Logan ever saw the number, his smugness would turn to ash. And Ivor, let me tell you a story. Chapter 2, History Reardon Hook. Betrayal rarely begins with a knife in the back. It starts with soft smiles, shared secrets, and trust given freely. Megan believed Ivor was the one person who would never hurt her. But now, standing in the ruins of that friendship, Megan starts to trace every red flag she once ignored. All the way back to high school. I met Ivor when I was 17, back in high school in Seattle. She had that effortless beauty that looked like it didn't try too hard. Wind-swept blonde hair, a smile that could get her out of detention, and a way of making you feel like the only person that mattered in a crowded room. We shared a desk in US history class. It started with her borrowing a pen, and by the end of the week, we were eating lunch together and swapping secrets like we'd known each other for years. I still remember the first time she said it. "You know, the boys here are boring. I prefer ones who are already taken." I laughed, thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. Year after year, Ivor had this uncanny way of slipping into her friends' relationships. It always ended the same, someone heartbroken, Ivor shrugging innocently. "I didn't do anything." They were the ones who made the move. I stayed friends with her anyway. Maybe it was loyalty. Maybe it was because I thought I was different. She was the first to know I had a crush on Logan, a quiet, artistic guy in my advanced art class who spent more time in the supply room than with people. When he confessed his feelings to me, I was shocked. For months, I was sure he liked Avor. They had worked on a school project together, always laughing in the library, but when Logan chose me, Avor just smiled and said, "I'm happy for you." Really? And I believed her. Even when we went off to college in different cities, we stayed close. Every few months, we'd meet up at this little coffee shop in Portland when she came to visit. Logan joined us too. We called it our safe corner. There were no assignments, no stress. Just coffee, jazz, and Avor's laughter drifting over the music. When Avor got engaged to Graham, a calm, thoughtful architect from Chicago, I thought she'd finally found something real. The wedding was held in a lavender greenhouse. I designed the invitations. Logan and I stood beside her as she walked down the aisle. It felt perfect. She hugged me tight that night and whispered, if I could trust anyone forever, it'd be you and Graham. But trust and betrayal don't mix well. 3 years into her marriage, Avor started calling more frequently. At first, it was casual. Then it was complaints about Graham. He doesn't understand me. He's too quiet. He's lost his spark. I told her to talk to him. Now I wonder if she ever really tried, because it wasn't long after that Logan started acting strange. He would leave the house with vague excuses. I caught glimpses of messages on his phone, text alerts that made him chuckle and then quickly lock the screen. When I entered the room, one morning, I saw it clearly. I miss you too. I didn't ask, I was afraid of the answer, until the day Logan returned home with Avor in tow and demanded a divorce. It all made sense, but I kept going back, tracing the steps, trying to find the moment it began. Was it 6 years ago when Avor walked into the hospital glowing, cradling her 3-month baby bump? I remember her telling me before she even told Graham. Her voice trembled. "Megan, I'm pregnant. Finally, I have something that makes everything mine." I didn't fully understand what she meant, but Logan did, because he offered to take her to appointments. Graham was working late. It made sense. Logan had always been helpful, but then he became too involved. He tracked her vitamins, monitored her ultrasounds, wrote dietary notes in his journal. One entry burned into my mind, week 16. Seafood. Avoid. When I asked, he shrugged. Just helping a friend. Graham's not around. I stayed quiet, but a storm had begun to build in me. When Avor gave birth, it was Logan outside the delivery room, not Graham. A nurse had asked, "You're Mr. Logan's wife?" He's been so supportive of Miss Avor. I nodded and walked away, hiding the tsunami of betrayal rising in my chest. The cracks widened when Elise, Avor's daughter, started calling Logan daddy. At first, it was innocent. Children mix things up, but then it kept happening. At a barbecue Avor hosted, Elise ran up to Logan, grabbed his leg, and beamed. "Daddy, can I have lemonade?" I smiled weakly and excused myself to the balcony. Logan followed me. "Are you imagining things again?" he said condescendingly. I looked at him, really looked. "What are you doing, Logan? You treat Elise like your own. You're always at Avor's. What about me?" He laughed. "You just don't get it, Megan. Avor needs me. You're too independent. You don't need anyone." That line cut deeper than any insult. Yes, I was independent, but that didn't mean I deserved to be replaced. It didn't mean I wanted to be forgotten. From that moment on, Logan was just a body in the house. The heart had long moved elsewhere. I knew now that Avor hadn't just taken my husband. She had targeted the one person I loved without condition. But if they thought they could quietly erase me, they were wrong, very wrong, because now I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was building a plan. Chapter 3, the launch 2 months after the court date, I hosted a book launch in downtown Portland. It wasn't just any book, it was my new illustrated memoir, The Quiet Storm, How I Painted My Way Through Betrayal. The opening line, "I used to think quiet made me weak, but silence is where storms grow." People lined up for hours, not just for the story, but for the symbolism, for the triumph. Avor tried to show up once, at a local book signing in a little bookstore I loved. She stood in line, sunglasses on. But when she reached the front, she didn't say a word. She just stared at me. I looked her straight in the eyes and handed her a signed copy. To Avor, I said with a soft smile, "Thank you for making space in my life for peace, purpose, and power." She left without a word. Logan tried to contact me 6 months later. Said Avor left him. That he missed my calm. That he missed being taken care of. I never replied, but I did block him. On everything. My story wasn't his to walk back into. Now, I teach young women to write, to draw, to own their stories and their value. I travel. I paint. I breathe. Sometimes I walk through my rose garden and remember the woman I was, the one who thought she was fragile, but fragility can be deceiving, even. Petals have thorns, and some storms start with a whisper.